Everyone for tuning in this morning, and I'm hoping to get you guys inspired to make better visualizations with your data through maps and charts. And so a little bit about myself. I've spent over 25 years in state and local government in Arizona. And how I kind of fell into data viz is I started out, well, I was a demographer first, and that's how I got into GIS. And started learning that, this data we needed to visualize it, right? And of course, that's what turned me on to GIS. And then as I moved on, I went to the Department of Transportation, and I found myself presenting a lot. And I present to a variety of different audiences, and I'd sit through a lot of presentations too. And you sit in those presentations and sometimes people's eyes glaze over and you're up there and it's kind of awkward because you're thinking you're not getting your point across, you're not sharing stuff. So I kept trying to figure out how I can make my data better, because I was a data nerd and I was presenting stuff that was a little more technical to some people. And so it started me on this path. And so this presentation, this workshop this morning is a lot of the key stuff and the highlights of what I've learned, and a way to hopefully get you guys excited and help you to create some better visualizations with your data. And so we have 3 hours today. I'll give you some breaks. And I really appreciate you guys sitting in. I know this is a pre-conference workshop. This is the second time I presented for WLI. I was there at the fall meeting. So let's kick this off. Nicole, I hope you're there to help me out with a poll. I'm going to get you guys here to do some work this morning. Let's start with a little poll. Here it is. I did a presentation at the fall meeting. So just click yes or no if you attended that. And that was held on the Professional Development Day. And give people, I guess, Nicole, I'll let you, when you see, like, I can't see the poll thing, so we're gonna have to let Nicole share it back with us when everybody's got a chance to put that in. And the reason why I asked this question is because the first part is a little bit of the same. Oh, so not a lot. Good. So a lot of new people. That's great. So for those of you that did attend it, I know Jennifer's in here. I know she was there. The first part will be a kind of a repeat of some of that. I shook it up a little bit, but there's a lot of new stuff and a lot of stuff that I wasn't able to cover, obviously, because it was only, 40 minutes, I think, the WLIA. All right, so let's close out that. Oh, let's start. Let's see more about you guys. One more poll. Start you guys going. Okay, what's your data viz level? Are you just getting started? What is this data viz stuff? Do you have some experience? So you've made some maps and charts in Excel, or you make lots of maps? That's what you do, mostly maps. Or do you make mostly charts? Pick that. If you do everything, go ahead, make yourself an expert. That's cool. If you're just not sure and you're just here to have fun, that's okay too. So get you guys going there. I get to actually submit this too. All right. Get you guys going. What do we got here? Some experience. All right, most of you. And a lot of map makers. That's great, because I have a lot of maps in here. And so this is going to be, you're going to see a lot of visuals today, because data visualization, right? That's what I'm going to be showing you. All right, we even have some experts in here. Great. Okay. Awesome. Thanks everybody for coming. And I hope that when you go away today, you all are going to be striving to be expert. All right, let's kick this off. All right, so why do we want to visualize data? First of all, I don't want to visualize one of these things that's in my way. Okay. All right. So you guys know that we visualize data to help us understand our data, right? We look for patterns, we look for hotspots, especially as GIS people, that's what we do all the time, right? You're always visualizing your data. All of our data have a spatial component that we can plot on a map and look at it and see how it's dispersed, and get a deep understanding of our data and analyzing it. And so we have a fundamental understanding of this. But what I want to show you through this talk and through this workshop is tips to improve, to make these better. You guys are doing this all the time, every day, and let's learn together how to do this, because your data are not going to just leap off the page or out of your database and convert themselves into some high quality and useful information. You got to do something with it. You've got to make a visualization. You've got to share it with other people. And how do you do that? All right, so I apologize. I'm not getting all my screens together here on this thing, but we're going to get rolling here. All right, I'm going to start you guys out with an example. This is one of my very favorite visualizations. And so maybe a lot of you have seen this one before. This is a map. And Edward Tufte, if you know who he is, he's kind of like a visualization expert that people look to all the time. But he also refers to this as probably the best statistical graphic ever drawn. And what I like about this is it's not just a chart and a graphic, it's a map, right? So it's a flow map, and it was by Charles Joseph Menard. And what he wanted to show was the devastation of war, right? And so what it does is this describes the progressive losses in men of the French army during the French invasion of Russia in 1812. Okay, so let me see if I can get my laser pointer here. All right, there we go. All right, so this tan line here and the width, these are the men going in to Russia. Okay, they start over here at the border and they're marching in. And as the width of the line gets thinner, the width indicates how many men there are. So as you can see, they start to lose men. The men go off this way, some come down, but as they're going, it's Russia, it's the winter, right? So there's a lot of bad weather. They're fighting little battles as they go. So they're losing men. They started out, and I think, let me zoom in here a little bit for you guys. There we go. All right, so as you see, they get out to the border, they come back is what this black line is. As they're coming back, they start out with 100,000 men out here. Barely maybe see 422,000 men, excuse me, they started out with. But then by the time they come back, and that's what the black line is, they lose more and more men. Men are dying, they can't get supplies. They're also, having battles and whatnot. And so it's getting thinner and thinner, and these guys come back and meet up with them. They come back. By the time they get back to the battle, there's only, or back to the border, it's 10,000 men. So this is pretty cool. I'm gonna go back to the full thing. It visualizes how dramatic this loss was. Even down here, he's got the temperature, how cold it was as they were coming back. It's just really incredible. And so this is the kind of thing that's like amazing. How do you do this? You take all this complicated information and you share it in a visualization. And that's what we're going to do more of today. All right, so got to go through the Zoom. All right, so Napoleon himself said, well, he's attributed to say, I don't know, I wasn't there if he actually said it or not, but the internet said he said it, so it must be true. He said, a good sketch is better than a long speech. And I think that kind of sums it up, right? Or we can make it more modern. A good chart is better than a large spreadsheet, or for all of us GIS people, a good map is better than a large geodatabase. So that's what we want to do. We want to improve, make good charts, good maps, so we can share our information and people will get it. They'll understand. All right, so let's start out. What I want to start out with is give you guys the basics behind what makes a great visualization. And I think this really sets the tone for what you need to strive for and what makes a visualization great. There's a lot of charts out there, a lot of maps out there, but what makes them truly great, right? And that resonate with the audience, and so people understand it. Now, these qualities I got from Alberto Cairo. He is a professor, data viz expert. He's written several books. This one comes from his book called The Truthful Art. It's an excellent book. I highly recommend it. Anyway, so I'm going to go through these 5 great qualities. All right, the first one is truthful. So a great visualization is going to be truthful. So it's based on thorough and honest research. Now here's an example. We have this chart. It was in an article in Reuters, and gun deaths in Florida. And you look at this and you say, oh, look what happened. It's kind of the opposite of what you would expect. Florida enacted the stand your ground law. You kind of would have thought that they went up, but it looks like they went down. But did they really? Something's going on here, right? What is it? Look over here at the axis. It's inverted, right? This is not something you would expect to see, but I think the journalist, the person who made this, wanted to make it dramatic and make it look like blood was dripping down here. So, you know, she kind of got that across, but she's misleading her audience. So people first glance at this, they're going to get the wrong idea and the wrong impression. So you don't want to deceive or mislead your audience. This is the way this should look, is like this, right? So if you mislead, you're also going to lose credibility, and people aren't going to take your work seriously, and they're going to doubt your work and your data. Here's another example of truthful. So this chart and actually appeared on the TV, and so it shows welfare jobs versus full-time jobs. Ooh, it looks pretty dramatic, like, oh my gosh, look at all these people on welfare. Well, okay, first of all, what's wrong with this chart? That it's not truthful, right? There's no axis, so you can't tell, but on my first glance of it, obviously they truncated it, so it doesn't start at 0, because look at, that's 101.7 million. And if you go up here, that same size, look at, it would be 5 times that, right? So they've misled their audience right there by doing it that way. Also, the data are from different sources. While they did get it from the Census Bureau, they're 2 different universes. So this one includes just people, one person with a full-time job, but the people on welfare data that they collected here is also includes people that are working, because to get in these programs, there's some strict work requirements, and a lot of people have to work. In addition, the data includes anybody, all the people in a residence, a household, where at least one person is getting welfare benefits. So if I'm getting welfare benefits and I have 2 kids and a husband, it's going to count as 4, right? So as opposed to just one person over here with the job. Plus, if I have a job too, I'm counted in here, I'm counted in here. So it's misleading. So don't do that. You don't want to mislead your audience. You need to be truthful. Here's one more example on being truthful. Sometimes not including all the data can be untruthful. So this chart was in an article and designed to show, look, the UK national debt is going up dramatically, and everybody wanted to freak everybody out. But if you back up, look at the full picture, it's not as dramatic as it seems, because it's been a lot higher if you go farther back. So misleading, a little bit misleading. And so a good quality visualization is going to be truthful. Now, the second quality is functional. All right. So a great visualization will be functional. So it'll be an accurate depiction of the data and built in a way that lets people do some sort of meaningful operations based on it. Now, here's a chart. Okay, so hopefully you guys are awake now that you've seen this one. So this is an accurate depiction of the data. All right, it's all thrown out there, but is it functional? Can you really do anything with this? It's all over the place, right? It's scattered. There's all these different colors. The legend over here is not even in any sort of order that I can discern. So it's a little bit crazy. It's all over the place. It's not functional. So, and a pie chart, I'm going to get into pie charts later, but this is just way too much for a pie chart. Okay. 2 to 4 slices, 5 maybe in a pie chart, and then you're just lost it. It's just too difficult. And again, I'll get into more about pie charts later. But how can we make this more functional? So let's turn it around. Let's put it into a bar chart. Same exact data. See how much more functional it is? I can get something out of it. I don't need all those colors. I have the information right here. I've sorted it so you can quickly pick stuff out. Now, if I was doing a presentation maybe, and I wanted to talk about fugitive road dust, dusty roads for air quality purposes, I might do something like this, just have two colors and then highlight that one. See how much more functional that is? It's so much easier on the eyes. My audience can quickly see what my point is and work with it. So the second quality of a great visualization is functional. Now, the third quality is beautiful. So a great visualization is also beautiful, and beautiful in the sense of not only being attractive and intriguing, but it's also aesthetically pleasing for its intended audience. Okay. So look at this map. I love this one. This is a map that by Lauren Tierney, who worked for the Washington Post. It appeared in September 13th. And so it shows all the fires on the West Coast. And I think this will, yeah, there we go. All right. It's just beautiful. And the fact that it has all the data in here. She's got a nice legend. The areas for the fire really stand out, a subtle background. It's just really good. She's got the information. It's got the truthful on there. It's functional and it's beautiful. Those are the first three qualities. Now, what else? A great visualization is insightful. Insightful in a way that it reveals the evidence that we would have a hard time seeing otherwise. Okay, so here is a great example again. This is from the Wall Street Journal several years back when the measles epidemic. And look at this. This is pretty cool. It shows each state and the cases of measles within each state across here. And then when vaccine was introduced, look at this, how cases of the measles just dropped off once the vaccine was introduced. Now that's pretty powerful. It's pretty insightful. I mean, you could look at this data on a chart and a spreadsheet, whatever, but seeing it like this in this way, you get some real great insight into the data. So this is pretty cool. So a great visualization is also insightful. And the fifth quality is enlightening. So it's enlightening so that you can grasp and accept the evidence that it predicts, so that your audience will grasp it and say, wow, look at this. And one of my favorites, I don't know if you guys have seen this, and being in Wisconsin, you should like what this is called. If you've never heard of it before, it's called a hockey stick chart, because it looks like a hockey stick. See, kind of laying down. There's the shaft and the blade, right? Pretty cool. So this visualization is really cool. So it tells a dramatic story. If you're not aware of what it is, it's basically the climate change, right? So it has the average temperature, or the variation in temperature. They did an average between 1961 and 1990, and they went back in time and got the temperatures. And this is the departure from what they call their baseline, right? Which is this line here. And this shows the departure from that, this black line, right? So the blue line shows this, the black line is the average in the between there, and then the blue lines are the actual temperatures. The gray part is their confidence interval. So they have all the data right here. It's very truthful. And you can see, look at how dramatic it is. As soon as industrialization and all this takes off, greenhouse gases, whoo, the temperature, look at it going, skyrocketing and going up. Geez, and this ends in 2000. Imagine what this looks like today. So this chart actually really woke people up on the subject of climate change and global warming. This one chart, and it was presented by some scientists at a conference or something like that, and this was like a big deal, and it still is. People tried to doubt it, but all their data was there. It's all the evidence is right there. So I would even argue that this one chart has all 5 of the qualities of a great visualization. It's truthful, all their data is there. It's functional. You can look at this and see right away what's going on. Here's the temperature, here it's going up. It's functional, it's getting the message across. Beautiful, you know, it is beautiful in a sense that it was aesthetically pleasing to its intended audience. It was scientists, they presented it in front of their peers. And so to that, it's a beautiful chart. Insightful, right? And of course, enlightening. Now today we also have one that I think probably qualifies as enlightening. Everybody has seen this, I am sure. The Johns Hopkins dashboard. This was enlightening. I mean, this got a lot of play. In fact, it also gave all of us GIS people a lot of exposure because of the map and because of what it is. And look at this. So this was actually taken in March at the beginning of the pandemic. I did this screenshot, and you know, I was freaking out. I was taking this every day. I was looking at this back then. Oh, what a difference a year makes, huh? Look at this is from the 11th of this global cases. I mean, this is pretty enlightening stuff. This is a great visualization. They have all the data right there. They have all the information. It's pretty cool. So this is what we're going to be working on today. And we're going to be going through all this stuff. So I want you guys to keep those 5 things in mind, the 5 qualities of a great visualization, all right, as we go through this stuff, because those are important. All right, so let's get into making visualizations, all right? Now, before you can do anything, you know, getting your data into like a great visualization and meeting all those qualities, it may not happen right away, right? I mean, I know it didn't for me. It took me a lot of time to try to work things and try to make something, you know, get charts and stuff so that they had meaning to them. And your data, just like I said earlier, they're not going to just leap out of your database, right? So you can have all this data in the world, but it's not going to do anything if people can't understand it, right? So here's this chart. So you may have data sets like this, right? Thousands of records, a lot of fields, a lot of attributes. You're thinking, oh, I know my data. I understand all this data. I understand what all these fields are. And if I don't, there's metadata, right? I'll just go in here and look at the metadata. Yeah, that's it. See my description. I'll pull this up. It has all this great information, right? It'll tell me what my field attributes are, right? Everybody's got great data like this. Wrong, right? I think most of us, our metadata ends up looking like this. You get data from somebody and it looks like this. Whether you're getting it from somebody else or even building it yourself, I think a lot of people miss out on the metadata part, right? But before you can make any great visualization, you have to have an understanding of your data. What's going on? Oops, skip that. So what I want you to do is when you have your data, if you're the one curating it, pulling it apart, cleaning it, going in there, you probably have a really good understanding of the data. But you're also going to pull in data from other sources, most likely. Or if you start with stuff you get from someone else. What you want to do, and the most important thing you can do with data is to ask, all right? Ask. The secret behind any successful data product or project is asking people who know about the data. They know about its shortcomings. They know how it was collected. They know how it was processed, whether it was tested. They know all that stuff. Ask them. Ask the person. This is the most important thing you can do. You know, who created the data? Where do they come from? How was it done? Find out the methodology. What are the data about? What do they represent? Does it make sense? How does it relate to other data? You know, when was it done? So sometimes you may get some data and you think it's all great, but it was like from 2000. So it's 20 years old. Make sure you know the limitations of your data. So know your data. That is critical to start with. And the next important thing is to know your audience, all right? Who are you going to present this data to, right? If you have a solid grip on your data, you know what you want to present, you're going to be visualizing, you need to move on to figure out who am I presenting this to, right? Am I presenting this to elected officials, right? If I go in front of the elected officials with that hockey stick chart or something like that, more technical looking, their eyes will probably glaze over. And believe me, I've been there because when I worked for the Regional Council of Governments in Phoenix, that was a lot of what we had to do was present to the mayors of all the cities and the town managers. And if you couldn't get your point across to them, it was trouble. And it's pretty unnerving to stand in front of people and they don't understand what you're saying. Their eyes glaze over and you're like, I'm not getting my point across. So who are you presenting to? It's gonna be different. Is it presented to your teammates? You can also do something more technical if it's your peers, right? Or are you just presenting to the general public and you've got to really simplify things to get your point across? So you need to know who your target audience is so you can identify a common ground and then you have a better idea of how you can present it, right? So that they will understand. So you got to find that common ground. What do you have in common? How can I best show this information to my audience? All right, so I know I'm kind of moving along kind of fast here, but I'm going to wake you guys up a little bit. I want you to do another poll. So hopefully Nicole's on here. She can pop up the poll question for me. Who is your usual target audience, right? Are you presenting? I think hopefully you can select multiples. Oh yeah, you can. Okay. So all that apply if you can. And if you have an other, if you want to throw that in the chat, that would be great. Well, I'm looking at here. Okay, give you guys a chance to finish that out and submit. And I want to thank Jennifer for posting. I'm looking over here in the chat while you guys are answering that. Thanks to Jennifer for posting that link to Alberto Cairo's book, because it's a great book. He's got several others. All right, let's see what the results. Oh, most people are doing it to stakeholders, general public. Oh, there are quite a good few of you that are doing it to a technical audience. All right, and elected official, manager. So it looks like a lot of people, it's more of kind of a general public type of thing. So you've got to tap down the technical stuff. So that's pretty cool. All right. Okay, so hopefully you guys will get some ideas on presenting these to these different types of audiences, and that's what we're going to go through. All right, so we took the poll. All right, let's talk more about your audience. Now, what medium or what method and way you want to present your information is going to be really important, right? So if you're creating a PowerPoint presentation, a poster, a written report, an infographic, or a story map, it's going to be different because you're going to have different types of control over your audience. And let me show you what I mean. All right, so let's talk about a verbal presentation versus a written presentation. So if I'm presenting to you now, right? I'm verbally giving you, I have high amount of control over what you guys get to see, right? So I can tailor my presentation and I have control. So I'm going to go through these steps and you guys have to follow along with me. You can't skip ahead because you don't have a copy of my presentation in front of you, right? So I have more control over what you guys get to see. Now, if it's a written document, I have less control. So if I'm presenting this to you, I guess I just send you the PowerPoint. You can just open it up and kind of flick through the slides and jump to the end if you wanted, right? I don't have that control. You can't get the flow of my story of what I'm trying to tell you, right? But the level of detail needed now, since I'm giving a verbal presentation, I don't need as much detail, right? My slides don't need to have a bunch of words on them and all this detail because I'm telling you them, right? You don't need to read it all on the PowerPoint, right? You don't need to read it. If I'm giving a presentation, I don't have to have as much detail. So take advantage of that, right? Take advantage of the fact that you don't need to put all that stuff on the slide. You can make a visualization, a graphic, a chart, a map that can go on the slide instead, and you can speak to that, right? And of course, the level of detail is going to be, if in a written document, I need more detail, right? So the level of detail I need in a written document is high, because if I'm making a poster, a written detail, you go up there, I need to add a little bit more detail in there than I would on a slide for a presentation, right? Than a verbal presentation. I need to give more detail. If I'm writing a report, you know, I need to put more detail in there. Okay, but I don't have control over my audience. And I'm going to walk through some of that so this makes a little bit more sense for you. Oh yeah, I wanted to make sure I mentioned a slide-ument. So sometimes you're probably thinking, sometimes I'm presenting at a conference, I'm presenting at this or that, and they want a copy of my slides. If I just have a map up there or a chart up there with no extra information about it, they may not fully understand it, right? So that's where you kind of get into this thing called a slide-ument. So it's a slide plus a document. And you got to do that a lot of times if you're teaching like this workshop, if you have to present stuff and supply that later, and people need to know the context of it, you can use your notes, and you get this thing called a slide-ument. Nancy Duarte, in her book Slideology, which if you're doing a lot of presentations, I recommend that one as well. And I'll have a list at the end here for you guys to take away with all my resources listed as well. But anyway, she calls that a slidegeman. So kind of keep that in mind. Sometimes you have to kind of, these are not hard, fast rules. So sometimes you have to do things a little bit differently. All right, now I'm gonna look here. Wow, I am cruising right along here. So I was gonna have a break, but I think we could, do you guys think you need a few minutes now that I blasted through all this? I'm thinking maybe 10 minutes if you guys want a coffee break. Does anybody need one?
Yeah, Jamie, why don't we do a quick 5-minute break, I think, for people, maybe restroom break and come right back.
Yeah, I think that would be good. So why don't you guys take, 5-10 minutes. I know I blasted through that a lot faster than I thought I would, but it's early morning and I just had my coffee. So yeah, if you guys want to step away, take a 10-minute, what time is it now? 9:35. So we back 10 minutes, I think is good. Give you guys 10 minutes. We'll pop back. So I'll start back up in 10 minutes. So at 9:45, right?
Sounds good.
I'm on the right.
Pam,
Right
if you
time.
want to roll the slides that we were doing beforehand.
Sounds good, we'll do.
I think those are informative for the whole workshop and conference. So.
All right, and if you're sticking around and you have some questions, if you want to type them in the chat, you can. I know I blasted through there. Too bad we don't have that music.
Oh, sorry. That shows this pattern as a percent.
All right, it's 9:45. Jamie, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, well, just a note, and I know that somebody mentioned in the chat area that it would be nice to have music during the breaks, and I completely 100% agree. The slideshows are actually shared with us via Gmail, and for some reason we don't have access to the sound that's supposed to go with the slides. We are working on that, and hopefully we'll have a solution. But in the meantime, that's just how it is. I guess the first workshop of the week, we'll work out all the kinks and bugs, and we'll get through it. So I appreciate everybody's patience on that.
Okay, I tried to get Nicole and Pam to hum or sing something during that, but they didn't want to do that.
Sorry.
All right. Okay. I hope you guys had a good, nice little break, got your coffee or water refilled, whatever you need. I think start out, it's the morning, have my coffee. I feel like I kind of was whizzing through a lot of that. So I'm going to try to slow it down. I know I tend to speak fast, and please feel free to drop that in the chat. If you say, oh, slow it down, that would be great. Okay, and Coulter says in the chat, imagine disco music in your head, but okay, that's great. Do that during the break. You can imagine that. I don't think my speaking will be to a disco beat, but let's move on. Okay, so this morning, we already talked about your audience, right? So that's how we ended it just before the break. So who's your target audience? So you guys know mostly who your target audience is. So once you know who it is that you're going to be presenting your information to, ask yourself, what is it that I want my audience to know or to do, right? So what is your story? Even if you're making just one chart, that's going to somebody. Somebody's got to see that chart. It's maybe going into a document. It might be going on a PowerPoint slide. What is it you want them to get out of this visualization, right? And there's a lot of different ways you can craft a story. One of the ways we used to do it when I was at the regional governments is we have a big whiteboard. Okay, this was pre-pandemic, of course, where we get into a room and we just start drawing, just start putting down everything up there that we wanted to include and stuff. And this is a great way to get going. You can really brainstorm with other people, even on your own. You could do this, right? So brainstorm it, or do, like I was getting ready for an earlier version, the first time I presented the first part of this presentation, and I sat there, I do it old school. I grab a pen and paper and I just start drawing. What is it that I want to say? And I just scribble it on a paper so I know kind of what the flow is. It ends up being a little different, but I can refer back to that so I don't get lost and forget what exactly it is I need to tell my audience. So sketch it out, storyboard. You can also do things like use sticky notes. This is a great way, stick them up on the wall. Then those are great because you can move them around, right? Pull the sticky off, oh, I want to put this chart over here, this one there, maybe get rid of that one or put them on the side. If you're using PowerPoint, like I did with this presentation, or this one, you can use the slide sorter. Take advantage of the tools that you have at your disposal. Pretty much everybody has PowerPoint or something like that, and you can use the slide sorter, move stuff around. Start out your presentation with just like notice in this one that I am, pull up my laser pointer here. These are just plain white stuff with dot, because this was what I wanted to show on each slide. And then I'll gradually go back and replace these with graphics or something that tells the story. Because again, remember, if I'm presenting it, I don't really need all this stuff on there because I'm going to speak that. I'm going to say those words. So what would be really better is to have a visual in front so my audience can see that. There's nothing worse than standing in front of an audience and you're talking and they miss what you're saying because they're too busy reading what's on the slide behind you. So that's how we were all taught. We were all taught with making bullets, but try to go more visual because you can, right? You can take advantage of that. And I'm going to show you some examples as we go through this. So you can learn how to do these kinds of things. It takes a while, you got to break what you're used to. Now, design for the medium. Okay, so what are you doing? I talked about this earlier. Are you going to be doing a PowerPoint? Are you going to be writing a report? Are you doing a one-page flyer? Or are you making a story map? Design for your medium, right? So there's a lot of different things that people create. Now let's poll time. Hopefully Cole's there. What type of visualizations do you guys usually create? So pick one, pick as many as you guys do. Are you making charts and graphs a lot? Are you doing static maps? Are you doing a lot of interactive stuff for the web? Tableau, maybe some R, maybe some, D3, stuff like that. You're doing interactive stuff, dashboard, story maps. What are you doing? By infographics, I think I mean more like printed stuff, but that's because online it would be more like a dashboard, same thing. But anyways, pick all the pie. If it's something else that's not listed here, type it in the chat. So let's see what you got. Let's see what you guys what kind of visualizations do you normally create? I expect most people are going to be doing maps and interactive web maps, but let's see when you guys get your submit in here. Oh, it's a lot of static maps, yeah, and interactive web maps and charts and graphs. So yeah, that's great because you guys are going to be able to see a lot of different stuff today, and hopefully I'll give you guys some great tips that you can go away with to make things better. I'm sure you're all doing great stuff. All right, so let's talk about, I talked previously about doing presentations in PowerPoint, because again, that's kind of how I got started down this path, is through PowerPoint and doing presentations. So I would do something like this. All right. This might be something I'm going, of course, it's related to the Phoenix because that's where I was at. Oops, my poll results can pop back up there.
Sorry about that, Jamie.
So this guy, what's that?
Brief hiccup, sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. All right, so this is kind of how I would start. I go in front of the mayors and maybe the town managers, room full of 30, 40 people in there. And I would sit there and talk about, okay, this is how we were after the Great Recession in 2009, right? Blah, 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 blah. And I'd read off all these and maybe I'd highlight a couple that I want them to emphasize, right? Okay, boring. They don't care. They don't want to see it, especially mayors. They like visuals, something quick and easy that they can see, right? And a lot of you are presenting to this type, elected officials and the general public. That was, the majority of you are presenting these kinds of presentations. So instead, look at this. Go in front of the mayors and say, wow, in 2010, at the height of the recession, there were 64,000 properties in some sort of foreclosure. And I have them on the map. And notice I had the whole slide here. I've used all the real estate that I have at my disposal and made it easy to see. And then I can say, but now I'm giving them an update, say, right? In 2019, whoo, look at that. Look at how powerful that is. The mayors can see that. They can quickly see how much farther we've recovered in the area. So they can see where their city is, city of Scottsdale. They can see how much better it's doing in foreclosures and so forth. And this is the kind of stuff you want to show them, something they can tangible, something they can look at and grasp right away. Now, when you're designing, here's a little tip for you. When you're, like I said, making a PowerPoint, use up the full real estate. Now, a lot of them now have, most people are now using this wide format slides, which I'm using today. So it used to be the 4x3, but if you're working and you're creating a map in ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro, set your page size to the size of your slide. So go over here. Where do you find that? You go over here in PowerPoint on the design tab. You'll see slide size, click that little down arrow and you can set the slides for. So widescreen, you can see the size here. Make your page size. And when you're creating a map to this size, if you're doing widescreen, and make it 10 inches wide by 7.5 inches high, and use that full real estate. You've got that at your disposal. Use it, right? Take advantage of that. And then what you can do is, so maybe you're thinking, well, I really needed those bullet points because if I get up in front of my audience, I'm going to forget what I have to say. So those were my notes, right? Well, you don't really need to have them on a slide. These days, of course, now I'm doing it virtually. I can have, let me show you, I can put my notes down in the bottom of my, down here in the bottom in the notes section of PowerPoint. So you have these tools at your disposal, use them, right? Use them. You have all these tools, put your notes down here. I have my bullets down there. And then when I'm giving my presentation, hopefully if I'm in a room, post-pandemic, when we recover here, the slideshow will be going on behind me and I can have my notes in front of me on a computer. Or like right now, what I'm doing, presenting to you virtually, and I happen to have 2 monitors, I can have my notes on the screen in front of me and what you guys are seeing and what I'm sharing on another monitor. And so I can still look and see my notes right there. So again, take advantage of the tool, all right? So there's a tip for you. Also, it comes in handy if you've jotted your little notes down in here, if you have to share your PowerPoint presentation in a conference, you have to share it. Your notes will be there so people can get the context of what is going on your slide. And they're right there. Yeah. So make it easy. Now let's talk posters. If you're designing a poster, a report or a brochure, remember, you don't have control over what your audience is going to see, what they're going to look at first, what's going to catch their eye, right? They're going to come up, they may spend a minute just glancing at your poster before they move on to the next one, right? You want to engage them, draw them in, right? You don't have that control. So use visuals to guide your audience. So here's an example of a poster that was done by a colleague of mine. And the whole idea here was, she has this poster of this village and notice how it's laid out. It's organized. It's easy to understand. It does have a flow to it. So you kind of go left to right with that. But if you walk up to this poster, you can come, maybe this one catches your eye and you come right over there and start looking at the housing thing. Everything is there. It's organized. It's clean. And so I have all the information in little chunks that people can easily understand, even if they take one little piece in, right? So understand that your audience needs something to draw them in. And then there also is more detail on here, right? So there's little text and verbiage that explains it better, right? Where I would not have it normally on a PowerPoint slide, I wouldn't have all this text, but I may start out with showing where the area is and then go through some of these other graphics. So pay attention to that. What if I'm doing, here's an example of something that I worked on. So we had these fast facts flyers. It was a two-page back and front document that we would hand out to, as a new mayor gets elected, or somebody would like hand them this information so they could see what's going on in the region. Well, it has a lot of text on there. And granted, it's people could read it. They could sit there if it's, they have it in their hand, they could read it at their leisure. But, we live in an era of GIFs, however you want to say it, and memes, right? And people and Twitter, right? Quick, short notes, little graphics. That's what people like to see. So what I did was I took this document and instead I pulled out what these data points were on all these little bullets. And I created a 4-page where you could open it up like a brochure kind of thing. And it had a quick blurb about the region, an intro on the front. You open it up, it's got all the key data points in the visualization, right? So you can quickly, my audience can jump to whichever data item they want to get more information on. They can see it right here in this document. And so it was an easier way to get that information out, and quick way for our audience. Even though it's 4 pages instead of the 2, it was still easier to digest because, picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So that's how it goes. So that's an example of changing a bunch of text and making it more visual. Now here's an example, and I do encourage you guys to look through the map gallery submissions for WLIA, which I spent a lot of time on and have found a couple examples. With story maps or websites, again, audience control, you're going to have a little more control with a story map, right? Especially the ones, the cascade ones that you slide through. My audience, I have a little bit more control. Of course, they can jump up here and click on one of these to jump to another part of the story, but it still kind of flows, right? So you have a little more control over what your audience sees. And this is a great example from the, let me see the name, Mary Wagner created this beautiful story map here from the Green Luminary Showcase. And that's a great example of a story map. It's clean, it's easy to understand. And the other thing I want to point out, here's another example. Another story map. Oh, that wasn't supposed to do like that, but okay. This is a different story map. This one's by Nicole Braun. This one, I wanted to use this one because I wanted to tell you, take advantage of the real estate. Remember, like I said, on the PowerPoint, you have that full slide. You also have it here on the story map. Take advantage of it, but what that does not mean is it does not mean fill in every space. Be okay with white space, with open space. Notice on this one, this map, it's simple. All she has here is just the floodplain area outlined, and she has this, it draws your attention right into the key point. And she can do that with the story map. You can do that because you can scroll through it and I can add layers if I wanted to, or take them away. So it's pretty cool how you can do that kind of thing. So take advantage of that. But again, don't, just because I have a widescreen slide doesn't mean I should throw as much stuff on that slide as possible, right? I see a great question here. I'm going to address it now. What software and skills do you need to make that infographic brochure? That's a great question. So on that infographic brochure, I actually used Adobe Illustrator. You don't really need it. I used a combination. I also used Excel for a lot of the charts. I started out with Excel and then I would clean them up in Illustrator. But you can do a lot of stuff with just Word if you had to, if you don't have access to something like Illustrator. And there's free software called GIMP. That's a vector editing software that you can use that's similar to Illustrator. I haven't used GIMP in a long time, but it has the same kind of thing. So there's a lot of different software choices out there, but that's what I used for that one. So hopefully that answers your question. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about picking the right visual. So I talked about posters, I talked about PowerPoint and so forth, but let's talk about the exact visual, one specific itself, right? So you have your data, how are you going to display that? Now, these are the most common used types of visualizations, right? So sometimes you don't need a chart at all, just a simple text works. So you may have noticed that in the infographic brochure that I showed. In some cases, I just had one key metric that I showed with a little bit of text at the bottom to describe what it was, right? So there's different types of charts and you can make a map too. So depending on your data might dictate what type of visual you're going to have. Now, you can use, there's no one right visualization, no one right chart. You can always, maybe a bar chart, maybe a line chart would be better. And I'm going to walk you through some stuff that shows you different ways to show data in different types of chart and how it looks. The important thing is what type of chart or map that you design is going to depend on the data you have and the story that you want to tell. Now, a great way, if you're totally at a loss and you're like, oh gosh, I'm not sure what's best way to share this data. There is this wonderful, and again, you can write these down, this URL, but I also have it in a document I'm going to share with you guys at the end with all these resources listed. But Anne Emery, I believe is her name. This is her website. She depictdatastudio.com/charts. She has this interactive chart chooser, and it tells you, what do I have? Do I have 3 points in time? Do I want to do some comparisons? And it'll show you what charts would be best to use for that type of data analysis that you want to share. And if you click on one of these, it'll also give you some examples. So that really helps so you can see how they're actually used in actual visualizations. And if you look in the chat, I also noticed that Jennifer just posted in there about GIMP. So yes, I mentioned GIMP. That's a vector illustrating similar to Adobe Illustrator. So if you don't have access to Adobe Illustrator, GIMP is a really good open source solution. All right, so that's picking out your charts. Now, once you have a chart, you know, you can just slap your data on there, right? But what you really need to make sure you do is to focus in on what's important. What's important in your data that you need to share? What do I want to focus my audience's attention on, right? So let's take an example. Now we're going to start getting into some visualizations here, you guys. So here's an example. This was from the Arizona conference we had a couple years back. We had our post-conference survey results. All right, so I had to go and present it to the committee afterwards and say, okay, this is what everybody said based on our results. So I could present them this and they could look at this and we can sit here and look at the numbers and, you know, waste our time trying to go through this in a meeting. Boring, right? What if I made a visualization? I know the first thing that some people think of is pie charts. Yay. Boo. Okay. This is not really an ideal way to visualize the data. And I'm going to tell you why. All right. How do you know what is important here? Okay, there's a lot of this dark blue. Woo, okay, so that means, let's look at my little legend here. Excellent. Yeah, it's not bad, right? No, it's excellent. Okay, so yeah, I can see that. But what if I wanted to point out to the things that we need to improve upon? My eyes, when I look at these, aren't your eyes kind of going to these bigger blotches of blue? Right? You're concentrating on it. So it's going to take a while for my audience to notice and to get something out of this. So what if I did something different? Let's shake it up. Now look at the same exact data, but now I've put it into these bar charts, stacked bar charts to 100%, and everything that is good and excellent that we did well on is in this aqua teal greenish shaded colors, right? So you can see quickly how well we did. Everybody liked the trivia challenge, right? They networking opportunities, they liked all these things. What do we need to improve on? The gray areas here. So we can quickly see, no, we had a problem with our opening for our maps and apps challenge, right? So I can look at this stuff and I can quickly see. Plus, I also summarized it right here at the top. 90% positive rating, the trivia challenge was the most popular event. Change your title into the moral of your story, into the key piece of information you want your audience to get out of it. That makes it super easy and for them to understand what you're trying to say. So if I was presenting this to our board, I could do it this way and they can quickly see, wow, everybody loved the trivia challenge and I wanted them to focus on that, right? So shake it up, try different visualizations. Start out with one. If it doesn't really look like it's doing it, switch it up, put in a column chart, try a line chart, try different things. Another way you can clean up your data, and this is a great example, focusing in on what's important, right? Another way you can focus in is to group categories together. Remember on my previous chart, I grouped them using the colors, right? I had all the teals for the good stuff and the gray colors for the bad. They were just different shades of it. So I was able to group them. Now in this example out of The Economist, what they did, they could have, and we've all probably done this at some point, listed every single one of the universities and ranked them and then had some story about it. But really, We don't need to know every single one of these 20 universities and all these other universities. We don't need a big long list of all of the names of the universities. What they wanted to show was the top 2 universities, what type of study people are going into, what fields what courses they're taking. And so they colorize it, they group them together. So they have simple charts and it's easy. And notice also their legend, they have the color of, they have the text in the same color. So you can quickly see the green goes to this is all others. And you can see from that. So group your categories together. This makes it easy, makes it simple. Simplify, remove your clutter and simplify. And you're going to hear me say that over and over and over again today. So I'm going to show you an example. Now, this is what I was talking about, taking advantage of the real estate of what you have, but don't overdo it. So this, I actually created this slide for a presentation that my boss gave. And so he wanted all this stuff on one slide. But you know what? We went back and I looked as I was working through this, it doesn't need to be on a slide. First of all, what's really important here? Look at this slide. You got to analyze things. If I look at this and I'm reading this, here's this heading in gold. It says 90% of jobs are in urban areas, but nowhere on either of these graphics, the map or this chart, does it say anything about urban areas? Nowhere. These are total jobs within each county. And then these are jobs by employer size. Nowhere does it say that. So if this is important, what would probably be more effective would be a map that shows just the urban areas. Here, this is where Phoenix is, where Tucson is, these urban areas, and show where the jobs are, right, on a map. That would make it more powerful. And put this stuff on another slide. It's okay to have multiple slides. You're going to talk about them. You can flip through them, right? There's one thing that always gets me is, okay, you only need 20 slides. Well, sometimes I may spend 5 minutes on one slide. I may spend 20 seconds on one slide. So it's going to balance out. The idea is they should enhance your story and not detract from it. And you shouldn't make your audience have to work. And another thing I'm going to point out on here is, okay, this map, sometimes instead of a map, a chart might be better. I could easily group these. This is actually, it's jobs by county. It's basically a population distribution map. I mean, it's all one color, but it's probably not really needed. I think everybody, if I was presenting this to, probably knows where the Arizona counties are. If I'm presenting this in Arizona, they probably know this, my audience. But if they don't, maybe that's a good chart. So think about it. What is the point of your story? Highlight, focus in on what's important. So here's a great example that came out, let's see, October. This came across my Twitter feed, and someone says, okay, one of my pet peeves with government COVID briefings is when they say, as you can see, and they reference a map and it's not at all clear what's going on. So they're giving this briefing to journalists, people that probably have some knowledge, but still it's confusing, apparently, this map. So I went on, I looked at this thread, and then somebody else says, oh yeah, exactly why I get so upset is this person says the bad data viz and the explanation in government briefing. So apparently, judging from this, it was supposed to show that, call attention to things are getting worse. You need to pay attention here. But the journalist took away that it was getting better. So I actually pulled out this slide, these maps, and I was trying to figure out what's going on here. And I even had kind of trouble figuring out what were they trying to say. So these might be great for a technical audience, somebody that clearly understands this data and what's going on, they would get the right message. But for people who don't, they needed to simplify it, make it more user-friendly. If you're presenting it to journalists, to general public, that sort of thing, you're going to need to rethink how you share your data. So simplify. All right, let's get into some makeovers of charts. And what I'm going to start with, and I warned you guys I was going to talk to you about pie charts. Everybody uses pie charts. We've all done it. So here's a pie chart. Now, all right, land area by ownership. I think I got real data for this, but this is for explanation. So default 3D chart from PowerPoint. People like to make 3D charts. There's a lot going on here though. It's hard for you as my reader to quickly interpret what the story is and what I'm trying to tell you. So let's say, for example, I'm with BLM, or I want to highlight the BLM land, what area we have. So I'll say I'm from BLM and I want to share you. So I could do something, I have this great data here. I could do something like this. I could pull out the BLM pie slice there. But still, how do you know what's going on here? Okay, 3D chart. So is this one bigger or is this one bigger? What's the size of these? So as my audience, I'm asking you to do a lot of work here. Pie charts are asking our audience to compare the different slices, the sizes, the different wedges. So you're trying to figure out the proportion. I know you're thinking, no problem, Jamie, I'll just stick the numbers on there. Yeah, look at that. Oh, look at that. Even more stuff. So now I've got the numbers. Now I can see, oh, yep, private is actually more. Ooh, this one, I pulled it out so it made it look like it might be more, right? But no, it's not. So here I have, still, what's going on here? 3D are really, really difficult to understand for your audience to understand and be able to see, judge the angles, judge what's going on. So I know 3D charts look cool, but I'm going to say don't use them ever. Just don't use them. Pie charts, column charts, they're way too difficult to interpret for your audience to interpret. Okay, just whatever you do, just please, I know they look cool. I also thought they were cool and I have used them in the past too. But again, they confuse. So let's make it flat. What if we go with this? Right? Well, it looks a little distorted. Anyway, but so it's a little bit better. So I can kind of see now that this one's bigger. These, it's still really hard to judge. So again, I'm asking you as my audience to do a lot of work here. Maybe I can sort them. So do something like this. So I have it sorted. So that's a little bit better. I have the larger to smaller all around. Still not ideal. I'm going to tell you, I try not to bash pie charts because they do have their various uses, and I'll show some, but they're really, especially a 3D, just don't use, because look, even Windows does not like 3D pie charts. This seriously happened when I was creating that chart. I got the blue screen of death when I was working on that. It was quite hilarious, but not. So hopefully that doesn't happen to you. I promise I won't put any sort of virus to make sure your screen go blue screen of death if you make a 3D pie chart, but try to avoid them, please. So here's an example of when a pie chart works, okay? So I just have 3 different classes. So remember earlier this morning, you might remember I said, if there's like maybe 2, I would say 2 to 4, 5's kind of pushing it with slices. I prefer 2 or 3 works best. It's easy, it's simple, gets your idea across. 2 is even better. And put the numbers on there. These 2 are really close, so it's hard to tell. But notice I'm just calling out my data. It's more like an enhancement to my data right here. So think about that when you're doing percentage. Now, a better way, let's go back to the land area by ownership pie chart. So what would have been a better way to show that? I could do something like this, right? I could do a 100% bar chart. So now we can easily tell right here the difference in a nice way. You can kind of judge the difference in the sizes of the slices here through my chart. But I can also call attention to it again. Look at this. Using color, pay attention to gray can be your best friend. So, and I'll talk more about using gray, when we talk about colors later. But notice I can make it stand out, BLM right here. And that shows what they want to know. I just want them to know that 27% is owned by BLM. Or I could do it this way. This is probably the way I would prefer to do it, to share this data is a bar chart like this. Again, that ranks it, kind of like I showed earlier when we were talking about functional charts, and we had that pie chart with all the air quality data in it. So we could do something like this, and again, highlight the one we want to share by using gray and blue to make that stand out. And I can even go one step better. So there's still a little bit of clutter on here, right? I have these little decimal points. My audience probably doesn't need that. And I have okay, so I have the numbers on here, plus I have it across the legend. It's a little much, it's cluttered. I don't need all that, right? The numbers are here. Do I need them up here? Or if they're up here, do I need them down here? What if I did something like this? Round off my numbers, take that percent, put that right here, change my title to, this is the information I want them to understand. 27% of land is owned by the Bureau of Land Management. Should have my chart and my data right below it in a very simple form so it's easy to understand. So work on this so you can really do a lot calling attention to your data and get your message across by just removing a lot of the clutter. So look for that in your charts. I'm going to look over here. I'm trying to keep my eye on the chat so I can try to answer as we go. And Kim or Kimberly, I apologize if you want to go by Kimberly. Esri dashboards give you the option of pie or donut. Can you explain to me why I vastly prefer a donut to pie? Is there a technical reason or just my personal preference? It could be a personal preference, but I think donut charts, people that really, really hate pie charts also hate donut charts, but purely again, because it's hard to judge. But donut chart, it's a little bit easier. You don't have that pulling into the center with that whole big wedge, so you can see it a little better. And I don't know, donut charts are a little bit more aesthetically pleasing than a pie chart now. They look more, people are using them more often. I think that's probably why you gravitate to a donut chart. So it has something to do with the way your eyes look at it, and you're trying to judge the different sizes of the slices, which is what we do when we look at those pie charts and donuts. So I prefer a donut chart to a pie chart as well, if I have to use one. And I'll show again, I think I have a few more examples as we go through the day too. And I might answer your question too when we talk about colors. All right, let's do another chart. This was an actual chart that was given to me to clean up. This one is, okay, so it's for the Arizona State University. It was the retention rate by major. So I'm gonna have to explain this to you because somebody had to explain it to me so I could figure out how to clean it up. Because remember, if you remember when I talked earlier, you need to understand the data. Somebody gave me this chart and I didn't understand what was going on. I needed to understand their data and what it is they're trying to say with this chart. So what it is each bar is another a time frame, and each cluster is a different major, a category of the major. So engineering tech, physical natural sciences, etc. And I remember looking at this and I said, so what is this number up here and what do the arrows mean? Well, the arrows mean nothing. So there's no flow. If you have an arrow, right? I'm sure when you first saw this, you're thinking, oh, it's a timeline or it's a transition. The arrows should indicate a flow or something, some ways to look from one data point to the other. But for some reason, I'm not sure why that was put on there, but it doesn't mean anything. And these numbers were actually the overall retention rate for this whole time period. So hopefully that made sense. So what I did first was I cleaned it up because first of all, the colors were a little bit too much for me. And the shading, I mean, it looks all right, but it's detracting from the story, and it really looks cluttered. So I went to a simple color scheme that would match their PowerPoint that they were presenting this on, had this blue and green color scheme. So I switched it to that. And then I removed the arrow and just put the circles up here and simplified my legend. So it's cleaner. I removed a little bit. I probably didn't need this over here on the side and these lines. That's probably adding a little bit more clutter to it, but it worked, and it's a little bit more effective than the original, you would think, right? Now, I did sit in when somebody presented this at a meeting, and I sat there and watched them explain it and present it. And it suddenly dawned on me that we're trying to shove too much information. There's too much on this chart, so it needed to simplify it even more. So I went back to my desk and I came up with something much simpler. The whole point of that graphic was to show that retention rates increasing from 1990 until the current, which was at that time 2017, and which one had the highest gains. Now look at how much better just by doing it this way. These are the categories for each major. This is the retention rate, and notice I don't need a legend because 1990, it's clear. That color is this one. This color is 2017. And you can see quickly the wide change. So engineering increased the most, right? Followed by medical. See how much more powerful. So sometimes, right, you may create your graphic at first and then find a better way to do it. So don't be afraid to try different things. Try different ways to share your data. Remember, what is the story? What am I trying to say? And this was the point they were trying to get across. And so we were able to redo the graphic and make it much simpler, much easier to understand, less clutter. Boom, it's right there. All right, let's try another one. This one I found in there's actually a website called Data Viz WTF, I think it is. Anyways, and so it shows all these different charts that are just not okay. So this one is very similar to that pie chart I showed you earlier under functional. This is not functional. Has all these different colors. It's got, in some of these, we don't have solid colors. We have, these dashes inside there. And so it's just crazy. And I remember looking at this and I thought, how could we clean this up? How could I make this better? So I pulled all the data into Excel. And the first thing I did, I recreated it exactly like it was showing. And then what I did was I went in and I said, okay, we don't need all those different those dashes in there. Let's go with solid colors. So I cleaned that up, got the solid colors, and notice what else I also removed. I'm gonna go back here real quick. So I also removed these lines because I have the numbers on top of all my bars here, all my columns. So I don't need this anymore. So I took that off as well. So I'm starting to remove the clutter, but there's still a better way to do this. And this is a lot of information. And granted, this came out of a report, mental health. It was actually published online. I searched for it, I found it, some big, huge document that chart was actually in. I thought, what would be a better way to show this information? And again, the first thing I needed to do was understand the data. What are they trying to say here? What's the story and what is the information here? What kind of data? And I didn't have access to the raw data. All I had was just this one chart. So I thought, what if we want to compare? So each color is one of these, and it's like public psychiatric hospitals, number of beds. So 162 for inpatient and 136 in residential. So you have to go back and forth in order to compare. So what if we did something like this? Turn things around, flip them. So now they're next to each other. I have what it is in the middle. You can see hospital inpatient versus residential, one to the other, and so forth. And then I sorted them on this side from the highest to the lowest. So of course, this side, because it's going to be a different metric, is not assorted, but you can still see. So I've cleaned it up, removed the clutter. Now, I had left this like this in an example when I have given this presentation in the past. And the last time I think it was the last time I gave this presentation, I remember talking about this and thinking, you know, I could maybe even do this one better. So let's look if we did it this way. So here I'm using overlapping bar charts and I make my comparison so much easier. So now they're, instead of side by side, they're right on top of each other. I can now quickly look and see the difference between these two, right? Residential is the gray. Again, I pulled out my title and I I made my legend into a sentence basically, right? Residential versus hospital inpatient. And you can quickly see which one, look at this one. Residential VA medical centers has more beds in residential than they do in inpatient. And so it's much more power. So don't be afraid. Like I said, don't be afraid to try out different charts, different chart types. And I see another question in here, Arizona retention chart. Did you do this in Adobe or there is a template? I did not. I believe I did all of that in Excel. I created that one in Excel, I believe, and if I can find it, I can actually post that in the resources that I'll list for you guys later. So if that's in there. And actually, when we get to the end of the day, so hopefully you guys all stay with me, I will also give you some exercises, because part of this I also did at one point, I did a hands-on workshop where I had people actually do some chart makeovers, and I'm going to give you those exercises at the end for you to play with, and you're going to learn how you can create an overlapping bar chart like this in Excel. You'd be amazed some of the stuff you can do in Excel that you didn't think was possible, and they end up being, they're kind of some little tricks in there, but it's kind of fun once you discover them, and you can do some really neat things that make your data stand out and look great. So that's charts. Let's look at making over some maps, right? We're GIS people. This is a GIS conference. Let's look at maps. How are we doing on time here? Okay. I'll give you guys a break here in a little bit, but let's go through some maps. All right. Based on what I've taught you guys so far, what do you see wrong with this guy? Right? Right. Sorry, I say right a lot. I try to cut that down. I'm not sure if that's worse than saying but I'll try to speak clearer. Anyway, this is an example of a crazy bad map. And I can say that without hurting the person's feelings because it was me that made this for these presentations, all right? All right, first off, what do the colors on the map mean? Exactly. What are they? There's all these goofy colors and they're bright and it's a rainbow, which can be okay, but this is not okay. It looks kind of like a watercolor. Maybe if I was doing some sort of weird artistic thing, it might be okay, but no. Now, I know a lot of people really love this Comic Sans font, but for a map, for something that's going to be professional in a document, it's not really okay. Yes, some people are in the I hate, just like I hate pie charts, some people are in the I know Comic Sans. I do admit that I'm in there, so I'm trying to temper it because I know a lot of people like Comic Sans. It is a nice casual font in your signature line, or if you're maybe making a flyer for a bake sale or for Girl Scouts or something like that. Comic Sans is fun, can be fun, but not for business stuff, not for a document that needs to be professional. And what else do we have here? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 different fonts. Be consistent. You need to have a consistent font, okay? You want to be taken seriously. All these different fonts, it's clutter, so it adds a lot of clutter. And why is my scale bar so much larger than my legend? It just sticks out. I see that a lot. People throwing a scale bar, and then the scale bar kind of defaults to this one size, and it's just, you see a map and it's like, oh, I see a scale bar, that your eyes go straight to that. So you need to be careful and so forth. The compass rose, It's a little bit too fancy for this chart. So probably could use something simpler. There's a lot going on here. Let's see how I redid this. Clean it up. Okay, so now you can easily see I just made the background color something subtle to match with the terrain, a great green gradient there. My title is over here. I have one font, sans serif without a, it doesn't have a little serif on the end of it, a little caret. So it's like a Arial or Segoy. I can't remember which one I used here. And my legend, I've cleaned it all up. I've moved everything over here into this one box. My scale bars are nice and neat. I have a very simplified, it's a very simple, quick little simple, maybe a handout, a map for a handout. It's simple, it's easy on the eyes, easier to see. And all of my little icons for the different recreation areas, which is the point of this map. It's about recreation areas on the north rim of the Grand Canyon. So they stand out here on my map. Now, this is great. So this was done this would be a handout, something in a written form, that printed form that you can share with people. What if I was putting this on a PowerPoint slide? Again, look at this. Now I have this whole slide. I don't need a margin around it. I can take advantage of the whole slide. And maybe I'm talking, to a group, tourists, and say, these are the different areas on your map that you have. And I could talk about, highlight some of these different things, depending on what we want to do. So we have these, you have a PowerPoint, you have the slide size. Again, put the slide size into in ArcMap, make your map size, your page size, the same size as where it's going to go. All right, let's go further. So choropleth maps. These are really popular and they're used a lot. One of the problems with using something like this is it's going to call attention to places with a larger area, whereas what I'm talking about here is people, and they don't. So it's people, not the area. So let me pull up this a little bigger. So apologies for dropping Alaska and Hawaii off. This is just a demo. I still love Alaska and Hawaii, but I wanted to make something quick. So it's just the conterminous US, lower 48. So notice here on this map, I have, this is where people came from, and it's a map for this yellow region up here, in Oregon Cascades. And so where people moved from, that moved into this area, where they came from. So the darker area, the red, is more people, which makes sense, closer in, moved in. That's where Oregon State is, so it gets a lot of people going there for college. But notice here, down here in the west, we have, this is western part of Arizona, Mojave County, Clark County, Nevada, and Nye County, I believe it is, Las Vegas area. So this is kind of Las Vegas metro-ish area. But notice how big out west the counties are. All the people don't live all over in this big old county. They live in one little area close over here to Las Vegas. So the number of people that came from these little spaces over here is the same that came from this big area, but your eyes are drawn over here because it's so much bigger. It's a bigger area. So try something different. Instead of that, use points with the larger size. So now look, when we look over here at Clark County, this dot, same size as these ones over here. And so it's much more representative of the data. You can see this easier. Now, where I got this idea, now don't be afraid to get inspired. Look at the different maps you see online. Look at in magazines. The Washington Post. Now, this is, don't freak out, because these total cases, this is from, I think, October, this screenshot. So I realized I forgot to update the screenshot to something more recent, but look at this, the same idea. And this is where I got the idea. So each dot, the size of the dot indicates how many cases were in that county. So it's much more representative than having the whole county shaded. And then you can click on it and it'll show, like for this, in this case, it pops up data for the whole state and outlines it and gives you the information there. pretty cool. Another way to do it, if you're doing a lot of chloropleth maps, and we do this, you know, as GIS people, I think this is one of the popular ones that we do. Look at what New York Times did with similar data. And again, this is from October, so don't freak out. So these are the COVID in the US, right? Average daily cases. So what they did here, and this is pretty cool. The shading is within the county. So it's the part of the county, they only shaded the part of the county that had a population density lower than 10 people per square, they only shaded the part with a density of 10 people per square mile or more. So if it was below that, it didn't get shaded. So let's see, when you click on something like this county, like Coconino County here, which is in northern Arizona, you can see the data are for this whole area, but there's the population, it's a very rural county. So the population is only in those little spots. That's pretty cool way to do it, right? It's very, very, this is a really cool way. I hadn't seen this done before and I really like the way. So you can get a lot of great inspiration from the graphics people at New York Times and Washington Post. And there's another one I failed to forget. But those two have some great, great graphics teams on them. Another way to do this and share data, if you're doing data for states or maybe counties, you guys have a lot of counties in Wisconsin, so this could work. A hexagon map, I'm sure you guys have seen this. Look at how easy it is. And so now it's more proportional. Every state gets the same area size. So if I'm sharing my data on a map about each state, I can use something like this. Or a tile map. This one's really cool. And there's a template out there somewhere that I found. I think it's in PowerPoint where you can do these. And if I can dig those up again, I'll put those in the resources also for you guys afterwards. Now, if you've seen Johns Hopkins, let's go back to the Johns Hopkins. They've used this tile map also. Look at how cool they did. This is really great. And this was actually from, I got this screenshot yesterday. So this is a more recent map. But so it's the tiles of all the states. And then the color shows you greener the background, the more downward trend, and the redder the upward trend. So something's going on over here in Nebraska. My thing's small. Yeah, Nebraska. Missouri, Nebraska. Okay, so something's going on here, but some of these are getting better. Pretty cool, and even has the little chart, like a little spark line within it. So get inspired. Go out and see what others are doing and get inspired by what they're doing. All right, we're getting to 10:43. So what I'm going to do is I got a few little questions in here, and then I think I might let you guys take a break. Thoughts on symbology for proportional symbol maps? Oh, I had an error in my legend. Jackie, I'm not sure what your question here. So maybe you can unmute and ask me. Dave, good point. Dave, sorry, Dave just sent me a direct message that the New York Times retracted that map because it was potentially misleading. Oh, we don't want to do that. I guess you're right. It could be, huh? Because it's just in areas. That's true. So you got to think these through. I hadn't thought that through. Thank you, Dave, for pointing that out. Oh, you're asking about how to design the legend. Oh, that's a good point. I did a legend with proportional symbols one time, and I had to create it in Illustrator, where I had the little circle in the middle, and then each one getting bigger. So it was like one big circle with inner, inner, inner. It is kind of touchy there on the legend, but if you can create something separate and then import it, you might have to do it that way. It's kind of limited within Esri because the big ones, right? You get your spacings off. I guess that's I think that's what you're asking there. And Dave sent an update. Okay, great. Thank you, Dave. That's great. I really appreciate you guys putting the information here in the chat box. So didn't see a note of the coloring criteria that include only inhabited area with population density. So on that map, they didn't have it. It was on there because I found it. Let's look back. I'm going to give you guys a break here in a minute. So it's way down here in this about that data. So I guess that's why it could be misleading. So as a GIS person, obviously I grabbed onto that thinking that was really cool, but now you guys have a really great point. That's what I like about doing these presentations is I learn also. So what I want to do now, I need to get a drink of water and you guys probably need another break. And it is now 10:45. So let's take another break. You guys, why don't I give you guys 15 minutes this time, a little bit longer. We've gone through a lot. And then when we come back, I'm going to talk about color. So we're going to get into the color and selecting color because color's hard, at least for me. So I'm hoping this will help you guys when I share you a little bit about what I've learned so far about color. So why don't you guys go ahead and take a break? I don't know if Nicole and Pam, you need to say anything at this point to everybody.
Not really. I think we'll run the slides again. I'm not sure if the video or the, excuse me, the sound has gotten fixed yet. Pam, or we have any word on that?
Yes, it should have. And I have it running on my screen. I have my headset on, but the music is playing on my speaker on the computer. So I think that'll be a good sign. So I'll hit it right now.
Okay. All right, you guys, go grab some water, a little bite to eat, use the facility if you need. We'll see you back at 11 for the last part. I'm not hearing the music.
Thanks, Jamie. I'll see if I can switch. I have it on my speaker. I'll play with it.
See if there's an option in your share button or your video button that says to pipe the media music through to share it or something like that.
I think while Pam is working on the sound, thank you, Pam, for looking into that. Maybe a fun little activity would be to share how cold it is where you are at. I think here in Wisconsin and elsewhere, it's, it's quite the cold spell. So maybe we can see who wins the coldest. Okay, sorry, everybody. I really do apologize for the sound there. Hopefully we'll get it all worked out in the remaining workshops for the rest of the conference. But thank you for being our guinea pigs to start off the morning. We had some really interesting temperatures come through in the chat. Yeah, quite cold. I think it's the consensus. Hopefully in the next couple days it warms up. I think, at least the Green Bay area seems to be a balming high of 10 degrees tomorrow, so that's exciting. Jamie, if you wanted to comment in.
On the temperatures.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be actually curious to see how you would go about making a temperature map. Would that be, Chlorput or dot density or?
Interesting. So, it's actually like one data point for each location, right? So, it takes me a while I just don't blurt these out. I'm not as creative. Some people probably already have thoughts in their head. This would be a great challenge for you guys. But yeah, I would probably maybe different, you do that. Have Wisconsin maybe within background and then the different dot. You could do like I showed that one with a different size dot for the higher temperatures, or just put the number on the map and the lowest temperature, make it a cold color. So color scheme that's goes with the data. We're going to talk about color next. So I don't know. What do you guys, I'd like to hear you guys, and I see you guys do a lot of very cool challenges at your conferences. You have some great stuff. I saw some hand-drawn maps and stuff. That's pretty cool. A lot of artistic people here. So I'd like to see how you guys do it. If anybody has ideas too, be great. So I didn't really answer the question, but it would be, I'd have to play around with this. I have different ideas. Let's share my screen again. Get reconfigured here. All right. Okay, so I hope everybody's back. Made it back. You got water, drink. We're on the last hour here, and it may not even go through the full hour. I'm not sure, because this last part I have not presented before. So you guys are like my guinea pigs on this one. But we're going to talk about color. And you notice when earlier I showed you a lot of different maps. I showed you different color schemes and different charts. There's a lot of blue and gray. You see that's pretty popular for some standard colors that are easy to see. But color, I always have trouble with color. I don't know about you guys, coming up with the different colors you need for your legend and your different data points in your maps. How do you come up with these different schemes? You just pull the default? Do you have a color scheme already that's maybe matches your organization's color scheme or report? But what do you do? And this has always been a challenge for me. So actually pulling this together for you guys, information that I've learned so far on color has also helped me out a little bit more too. So I'm hoping this will help you guys, and please feel free to share any tips that you may have as I go through some of this. But what I thought I'd start out with on color is the color wheel. So it's, if you're working with different things, if you're working with categorical data, different categories, maybe you want to change the hue. If you're working with data that's a continuous data, maybe change your saturation. But get familiar first with the color wheel. And what I mean by that, and I'm going to kind of simplify it a little bit here. So I'll put it into little spokes, and I'll make one color for each. So this is essentially one color kind of around the wheel. So it looks a little crazy over here, but I think you get the idea for what I wanted to simplify it a little bit so I can explain some of this. But get familiar with the color wheel. We all know the rainbow color. And so as you go around the wheel, that's what we refer to as the hue, right? So the different color, right? What color of the rainbow is it? Now, if we have saturation, that's going to be from light to dark or dark to light. So more pale and washed out is unsaturated. Brighter, darker is a deeper saturated, right? So 100%. And then lightness. or brightness. Sometimes you'll see it called brightness in different applications, but so hue, saturation, and lightness. So it's less light, obviously darker the blacks, and lighter light saturation, the more color you have coming out. So generally, darker colors tend to stand out more and the lighter colors tend to recede, right? So keep kind of these things in mind, which colors pop out and which recede. And I'm going to go into that as we go through more of this. So also colors also come in temperature. So there's warm colors and there's cool colors on the spectrum. Now, sometimes the difference here is kind of in the, might be a little tricky as you get around here. It's, I don't think that's really completely cut and dried, but warm colors tend to have more of what I call a yellow undertones, and cool colors are more blue undertones. Now, when you're using colors that are near each other on a color wheel, try to stick with the same temperature, as we call it, a color temperature. So it's helpful, or if you need to have a tension, one color with another, a cool and a warm comes into play. So usually if you need a dominant color, warmers tend to be more dominant than a cool color. And I'm going to walk through some examples here. So monochrome colors. So all one color, a color hue for showing a range of values, 0 to some maximum value. And here I have 4 different areas. So the value you want to stand out, of course, usually the highest value is going to be your key color, will be the darkest. So you see, here's my darkest color, and then I have these lighter. So if I'm making a chart or a map and the one data point that I want to stand out, I'm going to use the darker color for that. And then these would support it. So this could work well, like if your organization, if you're trying to keep the color scheme with your organization, use one of the key colors of your organization and as that is your key color, and then build your rest of your palette from off of that. Now there's monochrome, but another one that's similar to that is analogous colors. And these are colors that are right next to each other on the color wheel. Now, again, I've simplified the color wheel, so it's just one color with the different lightnesses on here. So you can see it, but you can see if I have just 2 colors, I could use any 2 of these. So if this is my key color again, I can have these 2 or these 2, and they both work well together. They complement, they work together. So one doesn't necessarily stand out more than the other, right? I can just have 2. So your key color is going to be supported best by those that are next to it on the color wheel. Now let's look at opposites. So if I need to do 2 different colors and I want to have them contrasting, use what we call complementary colors. And complementary colors are those that are right on the opposite sides of the color wheel. It's great for highlighting 2 series with maybe a positive and a negative connotation. So notice here we have, I just kept with this main key color where I have the gold and the blue, but notice here we have red and greens right across. So you could do positive and negative for these types of things, but your key color will again be supported by those near it, but it's also much stronger with those opposite of it. So direct opposites will give you the most contrast if that's what you need. Now, you can also do something called a split complementary. So maybe you have multiple series and you need to display, you can try using a split complementary series. And then this is a little crazy, but try adjusting, I think I did this here, your saturation, and then you'll have a much more better palette. So my point here is to start with the colors, get the area that you need, and this is a split complementary, and then play around on the color wheel, adjust the hue, adjust the saturation and the lightness or brightness until you get one that's better. And these are nice and distinct. No one color specifically stands out, but they all work well together. So they complement each other really well. And that's just a start of one. So you can play around with these different things. Now, say if I have 4 instead of 3, you can do like a double complementary. So I've adjusted it here. So I have 4 categories of one color. And again, these are really bright and saturated. So I don't think I would use these. And this is the problem I had with, because I was using one specific color on the color wheel, I simplified it so much that it came like this. So let's try, I'm going to put in my brightness here, and I played around with it a little better and came up with, pulled it in, made them a little bit darker, adjusted the lightness and moved this one in just a smidge, and I came up with a better palette. So see, I still have those direct opposites, but I have enough. So play around with the color wheel if you can and see what you can come up with. And where can I find this color wheel? You're probably asking yourself, right? I don't see it in the chat, but I think you might be. Well, get familiar now in Microsoft, like Excel and PowerPoint, you're going to find this under, when you go into your colors, down here, this little thing called More Colors. And it pops up something like this. It's kind of like a color wheel, right? I mean, and it only does one color at a time, so you can't really play with the different colors, but this is how you can select a color and see where you're at. And you can quickly see the opposite side if you're doing complementary or what works well around it. If you want to get more specific, you can go over into the custom, and this will pull up. They used to have way back when they did actually have a color wheel, but now they've switched that out, I've noticed, to a color band. Because you're only picking one color, I guess it works that way. So if you have hex colors, maybe you have a color scheme someone gave you from a website and they just gave you the codes for their, whatever you're going to use for the key colors for a report or a graphic. You can put those in here. If you haven't messed with that, you can do that here. And that's in Excel and PowerPoint. If you're using ArcMap, where you find that is you go, so this would be ArcMap on the desktop. You open up in the color, go to more colors, and you have this little thing where you can adjust, and here's where you can put in the different types of color selectors. But if you go to this little caret over here, click on that, you get this advanced selection, and you'll get that color bar where you can go through it as well. Not as useful as the color wheel, but it's there, and it allows you to get custom colors. In ArcMap Pro, again, similar thing. You click on that, you pull up, go to color properties, and it'll pull up a color editor. And again, it has the color band instead. Now, if that's way too much for you and you still can't figure it out, a lot of you may know of this resource, and I highly recommend it. It's Color Brewer. Color Brewer too. So if you don't know where to start, and you need to be simple, you need to make something in a hurry and get a great color scheme, pop up Color Brewer, and you will be able to select based on type of data, if it's sequential, diverging, if it's qualitative. I'm going to see if I can pop this up real quick for you guys. Yes, let me pull this over here. Are you guys seeing my browser window? Somebody type a yes if you see it in the chat. Yes, thank you, Nicole. All right, so Color Brewer real quick. If you haven't used this before, I highly recommend it for maps. If you need to get started, and this is also a place where help me get started, but you can pick the number of classes. How many classes do your data have? So let's go with 5. It'll show the different color schemes. You can multi-hue. So these are sequential. Again, remember, it's from a lighter to a darker. And it's great. This, you can change the borders. If I'm going to use white borders, I can change. Oops. Choose. And you can see what it's going to look like on a map. Pretty cool. So diverging, if you have values that on one end of the spectrum to another, and you need something like that to show highs to lows, you can use this. And then if you have qualitative, it's kind of a random. Some of these things are kind of crazy. Now, one of the cool things also about this tool is you can also look and find if they're colorblind safe. So there are people that are colorblind. I'm not sure if we have anybody. I bet might be at least one person here that has some sort of colorblind. So look, if I click that, for qualitative data, none of those are colorblind safe. But if you go to some of these other ones, there are more that are colorblind, safe for colorblind people that can see them. So notice how many more options I get. I'll show you. When I click that, it takes away the ones that won't be good for colorblind. So sometimes you have to look through these things and play around and pick them. And then of course you can export them if you got the values. It's a really cool tool. So I highly recommend this tool to use. Go that. Oh yes, and thank you, Dan. I forgot Color Brewer is in Pro as well under Styles. So there is a Color Brewer Styles in there that you can use as well. But this is quick because I can see what it's going to look like against different backgrounds and so forth, or borders. And here's an example. This is one. Oops, what'd I do? Went backwards. All right, so here's one that I use the diverging. So I could quickly see, I went to Color Brewer and I pulled up this, I lost my laser pointer. Okay, I pulled up this color scheme because I wanted to show a contrast between distressed areas and improved areas. And so that color scheme really worked well with this analysis to highlight these different hotspots. So play around with it, try these different colors. I encourage you to do that. Now, another great resource, and this one I only recently discovered a couple months back, but it is free online. If you go to color.adobe.com, and I'm going to pop this one up also. Here it comes. This is a very neat tool that you can use. You have a key color. So in this one, I have my base color is this blue, for example, and I can see what it's going to, based on my key color, I can try these different color harmonies. So remember what I talked about? I talked about complementary colors. So you can see the different color schemes that pull up, split complementary or double complementary, compound and shades. There's all these different ones, and it's really cool. You could spend a lot of time on this. You can even create a custom one if you want. Pick your own color. Let's just do something random here. I changed my color. It's got that little arrow, and then change it to shades, and it's going to change that. Another really cool thing I wanted to show you before I go away from here. Say you have a image, a logo, and you want to extract the colors from it. I'm going to pop that up. Oops. So I have, let's see if I can show you. All right, so I have this cool map, and I really like this color scheme. So instead of like using, you got eyedroppers and all that in different applications, you can pull those out using that. But you can quickly do it here. Just drag and drop my file right onto here. And do you see how fast that was? Hopefully it came through to you guys. Now I have this great color scheme. And look, let's go back to the color wheel. Look what they use. Complementary and a monochrome type of thing. So their main color, they have this blue one, kind of calls attention to, and you've got this deeper orange. It's pretty cool. So you can do that in this and get a bunch of different color schemes just based on a graphic that you like. You could even upload a photograph in here, and you can, if we go back to our theme, you can move it around. So if that wasn't quite, if it didn't pick out the colors you wanted, you can change it around and move it around. So play around with some of these tools. They're fun, and they give you some great color schemes, things to start with. So for example, let's look at, all right, hopefully you guys all have seen this website. I'm sure you have since you're here, right? So the WLIA website shows here, and look at this color scheme. So it's got a really neat color. Now the logo itself, I'll get back to my laser pointer. So the logo itself up here is blue and red, two kind of opposite colors, right? So let's pull up and see. I pulled this in, I actually pulled it into the Adobe thing and pulled out the colors, but I have one dominant color. I have this red, and then again, like with that China map, I have some the blue color and then different shades of the blue. to back it up. So because this red may be too strong. So sometimes that may be too strong. Your prominent brand color, but you can have another group that accents it, that goes with it and complements it. One key thing I want to point out, if you're using these on a map or in a chart, try not to use your organization's key color, their logo color, as to designate something that's bad. So a bad data point, so something, you know, all the poverty areas, or, you know, anything bad. So just make sure your key, if you're doing your organization's colors, sometimes if it's red, because red usually denotes, we think that is a bad point, maybe try a little bit different scheme that would, color scheme that would go with that. Now here's an example of a chart. So this one I pulled some designs from this, and notice again, it's more of a complementary. It's more, I think this one's called near complementary, you know, but I'm not going to quiz you on what the names of these color harmonies are. But if you pull up the color wheel, and this is just a simple color wheel, this is actually, in case you're wondering, this screen box is actually out of Illustrator, just because I wanted a simple color chart just so you guys can see. I pulled it up and I was able to look at it on the color chart to see how great they are. And so yeah, this is more of a near complementary, or almost directly across, but it's a little off to the side. And see how well they work together in this chart. And notice they've also used lightness. So the ones they wanted to call attention to are in the darker colors, and then they have all the rest of their data points shaded off in the back. So it doesn't look cluttered. They're there to show you that there's all these other points out there, but they didn't need to call attention to those. The ones they want to call attention to are in their two main colors. Pretty slick. So good examples. Here's this map. I love this map. It was actually done by Audubon, Alaska, and it was a winner in the Esri Map Gallery a few years ago. It's another great place to go for inspiration. So it has this really beautiful, consistent color scheme. It's easy to understand, to follow the legend. And when I was trying to understand more about color, how do you come up with these colors? This one I went to, because I always remember this map is really neat, and it has this, I'm gonna zoom in here, the legend. So see the colors, the yellowish color here is more of the dominant color, because that's the one that seems to pull you in more. Notice it's more of a warm color, right? So it stands out a little more, but these also complement. So they're still there and they still stick out. And if I look at these on the color wheel, you'll see that I have a little more of a triad kind of, or a split complementary going on here, and see how it works. So don't be afraid to play around with this color wheel and get these colors that work together, that will complement and work well together. Another great one, so I was poking through the map winners from last year's conference, and I came across this beautiful map. It's a split complementary again. So you can see the ones here's the color wheel again. So it's more of a split complementary. And these are the ones that really draw my eye, and I really like these. So I keep thinking, well, these are the kind of colors I work with more. So these tend to work more for me, a split complementary, and they work. And look at this main color, the red stands out here, and all these other ones support it. The same kind of tones and hues all in here. So it really works well together. So if you find something, I encourage you, throw it in that Adobe website and see where the colors are, and pick out the scheme. You can modify them a little bit to match what you need to do. But remember, colors also, they evoke a certain emotion, right? So think about that when you're doing this. This is a nice map. It's earthy, it's subtle, it's muted, it's got a really good vibe to it. And yeah, Lori says, I like how it uses these earth tones and complementary. It's really great. But what if you need to show something more dramatic? Go with something like this. Look at the reds. This is a, I don't know if you guys have seen this before. This is from Ken Field at Esri, who is one of the cartographers there. And if you're if you've taken or you're currently in the cartography MOOC course, I highly recommend. It's a great course. He teaches that. But this, it evokes a feel for the data. Over the edge, death in the Grand Canyon. So he used this bright red color because death, right? And then, some blues in here where people drown. So this is all the deaths, people that have died in the Grand Canyon. I know I shouldn't make light of it because it's pretty, it's not good. You don't want to die when you go to the Grand Canyon. It's a beautiful place. You want to enjoy it. But it really works in this situation. I wouldn't always use red, but look at how it works. However, you also need to think, remember when I showed you in the color brewer about people that are colorblind. So this may not work well. So if you're using some different colors, you might think, oh, some of my audience may have trouble with color blindness. So there's actually, in addition to using, there's actually a feature, I believe, on that Adobe that will do the colorblind. I haven't used that before, but there are tools available. If you use a Chrome browser and you're looking at web pages, you can use this extension called Colorblindly. If you do a search on it, it's in the Chrome extensions. And it's pretty cool because you can just click on it and notice when I did that, this is a screenshot from using this Green Week. And I believe the most common color blindness is this one. Kind of a green-red color blindness is the most common. So but you can click through these and see what it's going to look like to someone in your audience that's colorblind. And this one still works pretty much in this. It's not as bright, but people can still, that are colorblind and have trouble with color, can still see it. So this is a great tool, especially working in a government organization. You need to be aware of this because you have no idea. You're working with all these different constituents, the public. You're going to have people that are colorblind, and you need to get that information out there in a way that they can consume it. So take advantage of these tools. If you don't use Chrome or can't use Chrome and can't install an extension, there's a web page here called TopTal, and it has the same thing. It doesn't have as many different choices, but you type in your URL and it will pull up the web page and then show you what it looks like to someone who's colorblind. So you can see if your colors are working enough or if you need to do some adjustment. So use these tools that you have at your disposal. There's a lot out there. Again, we talked about, color, let's go into more color. And so I spent a lot of time going through maps and apps in this year's conference map gallery, some people that had submitted stuff. And so I'm going to show you some examples from stuff I pulled from there. And I really like this from Marathon County on their COVID-19 dashboard. So their colors, they have this color scheme. Notice just 2 different colors here. But if you scroll down this, they have a nice dashboard, and this uses Tableau. So I'm also going to show you some different tools that you could use. Some people maybe have exposure with Tableau, some not. But this is a way to get your information out. If you're not using the Esri dashboards, there are other options out there. And this one, if you scroll down their page, you'll see some more charts like this one and this one. And notice I put their logo up here because they all come out of their logo here, the similar color schemes straight from their logo. So they've managed to do that use their branding in their dashboard. And that's pretty cool. So it's a great example of incorporating your brand colors. Now you don't have to use them all. They do have a lot of colors in there. So they could have gone with just 1 or 2, but this works because there's a lot of different data points and it works. So kudos, I'm not sure who put that together. So if anybody's here that did that, kudos to you, good job. Okay, so here's an example of, this is an ArcGIS Insights dashboard. Some of you may have seen this. This was actually done by, I believe he works for Esri. So it's not bad, right? So it has somewhat consistent color scheme over here in these charts here, and then down here they go together, but these are getting a little different. And it's also all defaults. So don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone and try something different. Don't go crazy, but well, actually you can go crazy at first, but that will help you to learn and grow, right? Try different things, but stretch out and think beyond the defaults. So look what he did using this exact same data. He wanted to go with a theme like a blueprint. So he changed it all to one color. This is the same application using ArcGIS Insights. And he was able to take the same data, rearranged it, made it more organized, easier on the eye, simplified it, and added one monochrome color palette here, all in these blues. And there's a map there and so forth. So don't be afraid to go beyond the defaults. See what you can do to clean things up, make them better, make it easier for your audience. And the one thing I will caution is, I did say go, feel free to go crazy, but do it and, kind of as your playground, which is great, but don't forget your audience. You're making it for them. So if I throw some things on here, some bright colors and gee whiz stuff, just because I think it looks cool, it may not work for my audience. So also going back to earlier, what I think it was Dave pointed out about that New York Times map, they retracted it because it was misleading. And, I hadn't really thought of that. So there may be things you don't really think about. So show your product, your draft, your designs to other people. Get input from people that don't have a specific vested interest in that, and get some critical feedback and accept, be ready to change and be accepting of change. So you may have to change it. And I know one time I put together this great infographic and I had this really cool chart. I thought it was awesome. And I showed it to our planner and I said, check out this infographic I did. And he's like, I don't understand this graphic. And man, I had spent a day putting this graphic together, trying to get it just right. And it was some population thing, kind of like a pie chart, but it had this, these different segments in it and all this stuff, but it was too confusing. He couldn't understand it. I thought it was so cool, but he's like, I don't even understand what you're saying. And I had to, back up and say, okay, that took me a lot of work and I was really proud of it. But if nobody can understand it, it's no good, right? So I had to go back to the drawing board and recreate something and simplify it. So kind of keep that in mind and get feedback, seek it out, right? And I'll go into that more in a little bit. So here's another example. This is a great dashboard example from Rock County on their COVID dashboard. And they actually, so again, with the tools, this is actually built on a product called Infogram, which I had never heard of before, but it's it's an online website and you can build these tools and it's this dashboard and it's simple. It's just a simple color scheme, 2 colors. It's uncluttered. It's just all the data are right there. And you can scroll through it. There's more if you scroll down, a lot of data in one place. So sometimes it's difficult to do that. And you can do the same thing. You don't have to use Infogram. Here is Madison and Dane County dashboard. Put this one together using Power BI. So there's all these different tools out there these days that you can really use. And notice this is a similar color scheme, but notice how easy it is on the eyes. It's just 2 colors. It's organized well. And again, see, I'm not gonna lie, these pie charts work. There's just 2, this is when it works well. 2 colors, it's quickly easy to see. I can see public health and other state. It's real easy. Shout out to Nick who does the dashboards. Okay, thanks Jennifer. Yes, if you guys aren't keeping an eye on the chat there. Thanks for pointing that out. Yes, credit where credit is due. You guys are doing, I had trouble picking. I went to so many different COVID dashboards trying to find some good ones, and there's a lot of them. So again, you don't have to have a different color scheme for every chart. Like this one, it uses the same one throughout. It's consistent, and it's still easy to understand. Now, another thing I wanted to point out is gray. And I talked about this earlier in the day. I talked about the importance of using gray. So don't underestimate the power of gray. This map was done, actually, I had been given this list of the top 10 countries for international owned businesses in the Phoenix metro area. And so we had this chart, this list of them, and I kept thinking, how can I show this better? Some sort of way to visualize it so someone can see it, it's aesthetically pleasing, and they can capture it right away. So this is what I came up with. And notice I wanted a map because I'm a GIS person, but coloring in, you know, Canada would have been this big red area up here, and then all these, the UK would be small, and so the area. So instead, I just made circles and dots and numbered them, and then you can quickly see. Notice again, the darker colors tend to stand out more. So this is a monochrome palette, but I used the darker for the top two, and then I went lighter as I went down in the color scheme, and then I just used gray for the rest. So don't underestimate the power of gray and white space. Also, I think I've talked about that before. You know, don't be afraid to have white space in your designs, in your maps. Here's another example using gray. So in this example, I had different, I have 4 different categories here, 4 different data points, but I only wanted to highlight single family homes, which is right here in my topic, is right here. And it says majority of residential construction is single family homes. And you can quickly see the green here is the single family homes, and we can see what's going on. There's the recession. And notice, so gray, I wanted to call attention to this point. And I showed that earlier when I showed the conference survey results. I had the teal and the gray. So don't underestimate the power of gray. And I want to, you know, just emphasize that and let you know. So that's color. I talked a lot about color. So hopefully you get an idea, and you're starting you're getting some creative juices flowing here, thinking about all this great stuff. But what's also a chart, and we talked about this earlier also, fonts. All right, so all these words, let's take a quick look at fonts and how fonts affect your designs. And I did show it earlier in that map makeover, but I want to show you, you know, a little bit in more depth here. Here is another COVID-19 dashboard from another county here, and clean, to the point, nice color scheme. It's got, you know, a nice sans serif font, you know, looks professional, very well done, clean. So what would happen if we had used everybody's favorite Comic Sans? Notice right away the different feel that you get from this data. All of a sudden, it's kind of fun, it's kind of casual. But, you know, you want people to take you seriously, and especially, you know, COVID-19, this is a serious topic. We want people to understand. So again, using a font like this is not ideal, because it's, you know, we're going to detract from our data. It's not going to make it as urgent and important. I mean, if you're going to use Comic Sans, why not go all the way and use Jokerman? Have fun with it. Anyway, I just had to throw that one in there, because just to be a little bit ridiculous, I know, but just to get the point across, and I think you get the point. So here's one more example. New York Times has this great story map there on racist housing policy. And so they have this map, and you can scroll through it, but this is the opening piece of it. And so this is the font that they use throughout, and it's a really nice, it's interesting because it's not as harsh. The edges aren't as harsh as you would get from maybe a Times New Roman, which I think everybody knows what that font is. It has a little bit of softness to it, and I'm not sure if they just trying to downplay it or make it more aesthetically pleasing, but it's not harsh, but it still pulls you in, and it's professional looking, and it does have the point there, and it's a good font. So notice these things, and you'll start to notice. I'm trying to say, so as you're starting to look at this, you will notice them more. But the key is, you don't want your audience to notice the font, right? You want it to be all part of the experience of understanding and looking at your visualization. So if they had done something like this font, you would notice the font right away, more than you would notice the map and the whole idea behind this visualization and this story about this data, right? So So pay attention to these different things because fonts are just as important as your color choices in what you do. All right, so we've gone through all this. We're winding down the last 20 minutes here. So I thought we'd go through and do a little bit of practicing together. So I'm going to walk you through a few more makeovers and based on everything we learned. So let's start with this beauty. This is an actual map that somebody did and put into a report on a project I was working on for the Intermountain West. I do have to admit, I did make it a little bit goofy. I changed the north arrow here and I added this made up logo, but all the rest of it is the way it came to me. And so the story here that went along with this, the little write-up in the report this was in, it was talking about developable lands around proposed Interstate 11. Now, if you look at this map, now that I've said Interstate 11, you might know where it is, but first of all, it's not labeled and it doesn't call out. It's this gold kind of brownish orangish line here is the proposed Interstate 11 that goes from Mexico all the way up to Canada along here. But you can't tell that because there's so much going on in this map. Now, to be fair, the person who created this map actually is colorblind. So he didn't realize how bold and wild these colors are in here. So, so when we got together and I had to ask him what are we trying to show in this map? Because I was given it, came out a report and we were going to put it into a presentation. And somebody asked me to make it presentation ready. So you look at this map, what are some of the things you want to do? The idea again is about the story behind it was they wanted to show where lands are that are protected from development. So developable lands versus you can't develop on them. So that's why we have all these federal different lands shown here. And I also noticed that the Native nations aren't even on the legend for some reason. But they have all these different federal lands because you can't develop on those public lands there, but you can on private lands. So that was kind of the idea. So I looked at this and I thought, well, this is a great example of when you can collapse categories because the whole idea here is whether it's developable or not. So what I did instead was I show the makeover here. And this again was decided to make it from a print to a PowerPoint presentation. So I collapsed all those categories into one. So just federal land and the Native nations. So you could see we just needed those two categories is all we wanted to highlight. And notice I used a color scheme of just the greens. And then I used an opposing this orange gold color for the Interstate 11, put the label on there. And notice labels, all the labels are gone in here because that was clutter. I didn't need it for this specific map. The people that are going to be viewing this, the stakeholders, they're from all of these states. They know that Phoenix is here and Reno is here. So they know these different locations. I don't need to put that on the map for this discussion and to show this. So I simplified it, moved my legend, changed to very simple, not my legend, my scale bar, very simple, small little north arrow. I put my little, logo down here and made a simple legend. And then right here in this space, I was able to pull out the key item and the point of this graphic. And what I wanted to talk about is right there in that thing. So, don't be afraid. Simplify if you can. Go for it. Think about what is the story that you're trying to get across. All right, now get your fingers ready because I'm going to show this next map. And this one, I did not redo and I did not make this. So this one actually came across my LinkedIn feed and somebody actually posted this and he wanted input he wanted advice. So he was seeking advice on improving his map. And so what kind of advice would you give him based on what you guys have seen? Can you type a few things in here? What do you guys see in here that can be improved upon? Now, if you look at this, I'm looking at the title, and it looks like it's about the megalopolis mega region, right? So colors are dull and they run together. true. What about those bright light ones, pink and orange? Needs more contrast, yes. A font for the region words. Too much megalopolis, mega region. Yeah. Reduce the number of labels. It's cluttered in here, huh? And so what is a megalopolis mega region? That is a good question. I wasn't sure either, so I looked at this quite a bit trying to figure it out, but I think what he's trying to get at is this whole big thing is this huge made up of all these other different regions. If you can read the legend. Oops, my chart's in. Commuta and mega regions, and then these mega regions. So it seems to be about the mega regions, but they're hidden. Scale and the compass are unnecessary. North arrow is huge. See, you guys are all seeing this. This is great. But what's he trying to call attention to, I think, is the mega region, but it's lost amongst all this chaos. I agree, the north arrow isn't necessary. And I did post a little bit of feedback, and I offered that maybe he didn't need those bright pink and blue colors because it was difficult to see, to understand what was going on there. But he really liked the firefly stuff. So that's another thing, is just because I like it, or you know, and I'm the designer, doesn't mean that it might not necessarily be the best choice, right? Scale bar is much too big. Again, this is what I see a lot. So it wouldn't be consistent throughout the whole region. Good point. Okay, so it's just kind of cluttered, and I didn't redo it, but I'm not sure what he came up with. He did post, and I'll show you a little simplified version he was going to use as an inset. And so this one's a little, simplified. He took out a lot of the clutter here, which looks good, and he changed the background. One of you guys recommended that. But I still, in this one, these still stand out to me. He's got the shading on here, so it's pulling me to the Great Lakes, and so, but that's not really the point of it. And he loves the big compass, apparently he does. So I'm not sure how he ended up, because there were a couple different iterations, and this was about a month ago. But kudos to him for sticking it out there and getting input, because you never know what you're going to get. And a lot of times you also get a lot of people, they don't want to hurt your feelings, so they don't want to say it, but tell them, be willing to accept that critical input. We used to do that where I worked in Phoenix at the Regional Council of Governments there. One of my favorite things was around Esri conference time, is we always had one or two people that, in order to go to the conference, you had to do a poster, you had to do a map. And so they would put together a poster or a map and then print it out, and it would be in our little conference room, and there'd be pins in there, and everybody would go in there and mark it up and say what didn't look right to them and so forth. And it really made for a better product, because the person creating those maps, when I created mine, I thought, oh no, there's not going to be very many comments because I did so great. But wrong, there were some things that I hadn't even thought of that my teammates really did. So seek input, right? Look for that sort of thing. All right, you guys are doing great. All these great ideas for changing. Now remember, I've said this before, get inspired. Look out there, look at other things. Here's a great example. And I looked to see if they had the 2020 map gallery winners or story map winners out there yet, but they did not. So 2020 Story Mapper of the Year contest winners, if you go to the Esri website, I think I might have this also on my resource list for you, but get inspired, look at these. Look at your own map gallery. Look at what your peers are doing. There's a lot of great work in there, even from the past years. If you go on the WLIA website, you can see the past year's winners and see what they've done there. I mean, there is a lot of talent out there. Get inspired from what you see. Here's a great one I stumbled upon. So I know it's an older one from 2018, but I really like this story map in its simplicity. It gets the point across. They've got their information they need to share, and they use this simple, consistent color scheme. And surface grants, that's the main thing right here. These dots they come right to you, and they stand out. And then the slightly shaded colors were the water grant areas in the background there. So get inspired. And again, look at magazines. Here's in The Economist, this map here. It's simple. If you find yourself having to, someone comes to you and they're in your organization, they're writing up this report and they want you to make a map for it. Well, you're not going to have a lot of space. So you might need to really simplify your map to get it in there into a document that's going to be on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So I found a lot of cool stuff. The Economist always has some great stuff. So they're masters at this. Here's a chart. Look at how simplified it is and small these different charts are. So get inspired. Look, if you have something to do and you're challenged, see how others have done it and learn from that. It's a great way to go. All right, so we're winding down. Where do you go from here, right? I've given you, it's like a fire hose of information, and I know I talk fast, so hopefully you guys, if I didn't see anybody say, whoa, slow down in the chat, maybe you're being too nice, but there's a lot of resources out there, and I've mentioned a lot of things. These are just some of the stuff on my bookshelf. But I've put together this data viz resources sheet. It's a PDF with linkable stuff and a list of all the books that not all of them, but some of my favorites are listed on here. And at the bottom is a link to Gretchen Peterson. If you don't know who she is, her website also has some great resources on cartography. And where you can get this is if you go to, here's the URL that you need to remember. So this is my website, geodetic.xyz, and then WLIA 2021. And you'll get, this is the resources. And in this zip folder, you will find, hopefully you guys got that. I'm going to put that in the chat. Geodetic.xyz/, I tried to make it as easy as possible for you to remember. Okay. So the exercises, these were developed, like I said earlier, they were developed for a hands-on workshop that I did. So there's just 3 of them. The first one, I walk you through step by step. There should be a PDF inside that zip folder and Excel file. I walk you through step by step how to do an overlapping bar chart. And the end of it ends up a little bit different. This is cleaned up a little bit better than how I end it for you in the exercise. But I encourage you guys to try different things. But if you've never done an overlapping bar chart, now you can see how it's done, right? And the second exercise, you actually get to pick a chart to make over or do all 3. So there's some fun stuff in here to challenge you based on hopefully what you've learned today and to stretch your Excel skills in working on charts. So there's one on black bears. There's one on craft breweries that you can remake. Look at these charts. That one's pretty bad. I think I actually did that one to make it crazy. And then there's this one on the housing unit types, which you actually saw a version of a redone version of it earlier in my presentation. And the third exercise is this map that I showed you earlier, but it's all the steps I went through in ArcMap to change it from this into a PowerPoint wide slide for PowerPoint. And so it just kind of walks you through the different steps. It could be handy in getting some tips. I know we did it virtually here, but you can do it one by one. It is done in ArcMap, ArcGIS desktop, so it's a map package that's in there for you to play around with. But feel free to try different things. And if you guys come up with some better ideas, I would love for you to send me what you come up with. If you want to go through these exercises and show me what you've done, because I love to see the different work that people are doing. Another thing, you know what I didn't point out, which I just realized here, is notice the difference when I changed the projection. One thing I should have mentioned earlier is projection. Everybody uses that web Mercator. When you're going at this level, everything's flattened out. So that's kind of one of my little things that kind of I don't like to see. I would prefer, something, use a projection that's worthy of the scale of your map and your data. So if I was doing, might not be bad if I'm doing a small area, region-wide or citywide might work, but at this level, probably more of an Albers projection would be better or something different, right? Okay, if that's not enough for you, here's a great website called Storytelling with Data, and Cole Knaflick is her name. She wrote a book called Storytelling with Data, and there's this whole website. You can jump in the community, and there are these exercises. It's free to join. Of course, there's a paid version if you want to go that far, but there's these great exercises, and she has a monthly challenge every month, and you can see what people have done, different things with charts and data. And so it's a great way to get some experience and start playing around with different data sets if you're not sure where to start. So this is another resource that I highly recommend as well. It's not maps, but if you need to do a lot of charts as well, this is a great resource. And so we're coming near the end of our time here, and I wanted to just kind of wrap up, showing you these are the tips I wanted you to go through. We talked about the 5 qualities of a great visualization, and there they are there. And my 10 tips are on the right side of the page here. Understand your data. Don't forget to make sure you know the limitations of your data and what your data are telling you. Know who you're presenting to. Mock up a storyboard. If you're telling a story or doing a presentation, if you're just making a chart, you can sketch out, a bar chart or a line chart or what you're doing, and design for what medium you're doing. And again, removing the clutter also helps you focus in on what's important, and using color and fonts wisely, all about cleaning things up, removing clutter. I kept going back to that. And again, ask for feedback, be open to change, and get inspiration from others. So look at that. I almost ended right on time here. There is my contact information. I want to leave you with this quote. And I guess I answered questions in the chat, and I apologize for going right up to the last minute here. But if anybody has any questions, I'll stick around if you want to unmute and ask away, or stick it in the chat. We can go through some stuff. So with that.
Yes, thank you, Jamie. I think I can speak for everybody that everybody at least gain some knowledge, 1, 2, 10 things that they can take and make their charts and graphs a little bit more visually appealing and better to understand. So I appreciate, on behalf of myself and Pam, all your insight. So
Well, thanks everybody for coming. And hopefully I answered your questions along the way. Feel free to email me with questions. And again, send me any of your great stuff that you come up with, and any of those exercises that you do. I would love to see them and get your ideas, because I learn too, right? So there's some great tips that I get from you guys too. So I love it. So thank you everybody for sharing your morning with me. I really appreciate it. And I hope you guys stay warm out there in Wisconsin. Beautiful Wisconsin.